Hi everybody, this is John Adams, and this is the replay of the webinar that we did a little bit earlier that covers the topic, how to hold title to real estate in Georgia. My name is John Adams. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. You will find this presentation perhaps more entertaining and interesting if you'll set your browser to full screen. You're welcome to send me an email. This is not being made available to the world. This is just to the people who had registered for this event, so I know who you are. I'd love to have you communicate with me. My email is johnadams@money99.com. I'd also like your suggestions for future webinars, and I'd like to invite you to listen to the John Adams radio show, which is every Sunday at 3 p.m. on 920 AM WGKA. We have a good time. We have great guests and lots of interesting topics. As always, we take your calls. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that I am not an attorney and I'm not qualified to give you legal advice. I do recommend that before you take any actions based on listening and watching this presentation, that you consult with your own attorney, simply because I don't have access. One, I'm not an attorney. Two, your attorney is qualified to help you review all your real estate documents and make sure they're appropriate for your personal situation. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear. I don't want anybody thinking I'm giving legal advice, because I'm not. First, about me, I am a real estate broker. I think I got my license in 1978. I bought my first property in 1974, which was 38 units of apartments out on Simpson Road. That was a real experience. It was a learning experience. I'm a landlord to this day. I founded and was director of Decatur First Bank for 14 years. I am a writer or a columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for over 20 years, been a radio host for over 20 years, which I really enjoy. I have weathered 5 recessions without going bankrupt, and I think it looks like I'm going to make it through this one. And I'm an Eagle Scout, and I'm a proud Eagle Scout. My dad was an Eagle Scout, so come from a line. How about that? Let's move ahead. Why do we invest in real estate? Well, the clear answer is we want to make a profit. There's really no other reason. I guess you could just have an intrinsic love of real estate, but I haven't found anybody like that yet. And if our goal is to make a profit, we're going to be making that in a couple of areas. First is in cash flow, which is the money that comes in every month in excess of our expenses. We call that positive cash flow, and it's what's left over at the end of the month. Hopefully there is some. In addition, our net worth tends to increase in value over time, simply because real estate tends to increase in value over time. Also, we're paying off any debt that's owed against the property, so our net worth hopefully is going to be increasing. Why do we do that? We increase our cash flow and our net worth so we can provide food and shelter to ourselves and our family. We can provide a desired lifestyle. Hopefully we can, if we have them and want to, take care of our children, providing for their needs and maybe their education, as well as providing for our own retirement. I don't think you're going to be happy with the way Social Security plans to take care of you. So you're going to pretty much be on your own, if I know who you are, and I think I do. But as you generate that profit, you've got to protect it. And it's sad but true that there are people who make a living off stealing money from other people. And we're going to talk about that this afternoon. Here are the threats to your wealth. Look how upset this guy is. Hopefully that's not you. These people would like to take money from you. Now, obviously it's not everyone, but among these groups, trust me, in every group there's one person or more who, if they had their way, would strip you bare. You have tenants who are under financial pressure, or they're just bad people, and they'd like to take all of your accumulated net worth. You have neighbors that are jealous of your lifestyle or jealous of things you have accumulated. or even if they suspect you've accumulated them, they'd like to take them away from you. Certainly, creditors would love to clean you out if they could. You don't have any friends at the Internal Revenue Service. Trust me on that one. Your personal injury attorneys are out there saying, get the money you deserve. How much? Find out how much your case is worth. And then they start promising $300,000, $500,000, $850,000 for a trip and fall or an automobile accident, or in your and my case, a premises injury. That is the latest thing among personal injury attorneys, is trying to find premises injury and blame it on the owner or the landlord or both. Then you got professional scammers out there. I've been hit by them personally. I had a tenant on a property. I won't go into details because the case is technically still pending, but essentially dropped. This son of a gun was a tenant, decided things weren't working out in his life, so he pretended to have a slip and fall, blamed it on the property, went to the emergency room and got all kinds of prescriptions for OxyContin painkillers. I didn't know what those were, but it turns out that it makes you feel very good, or makes you drunk or something. I don't know what it does. Anyway, he then contacted a nuisance lawsuit attorney and filed suit against me and the management company and the owner of the property. Turns out later we had to hire an investigator to find this out, but this particular tenant had been in jail before for selling illegal prescription drugs known as OxyContin, and he had a history of doing this again and again and again. He would have he had an accident on the job one time where he was off the job for 6 months, collected money for 6 months, got hundreds of prescriptions for OxyContin, sold all of those drugs, and went to jail for it. So when that was discovered, that was sort of tough on his lawsuit, but nonetheless, he's a professional scammer. And then you've got these attorneys out there that cater to these people. These things are all threats to your wealth. So if you own real estate, you are at risk. You may think you're not, but I'm encouraging you to think again. I'm going to, at the end of this presentation, invite you to a seminar that Robert Witcher, attorney at law, and I will be hosting on how to protect your assets and your privacy on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013. It's called the Real Estate LLC in Georgia. It's from 6:45 until 9:45 p.m. at the Hilton Garden in Perimeter, Ashford Dunwoody, just inside 285. Now, if we have seats left at the time you attempt to register, they'll be $79. There will be no discounts for this event because it's going to sell out. That includes the presentation and the manual. If you can't come, it's okay. We are going to be professionally recording this on audio CDs, and so for the same price, $79 plus $10 for shipping and handling, we'll be making available to you 3 audio CDs, the manual, and all of the forms as if you had been there. There will be a comprehensive manual. But the name of the presentation is the Real Estate LLC in Georgia. Let's see why a presentation like this is necessary. The first question you've got to ask if you are in the real estate business is, should you be a sole proprietor, which is what you are if you don't do anything, a general partnership, a corporation? And we talk a lot about corporations, and then all of a sudden people start saying, well, wait a minute, if you're going to be a corporation, you definitely should be a Nevada corporation. And there are all these companies that sort of look questionable that will help you set up a Nevada corporation without ever going to Nevada. Now, I've been to Las Vegas a few times, and the whole place is sort of seedy. I'm not sure I want a corporation based in Nevada, but it turns out that it's entirely unnecessary, especially for those of you that live in Georgia. But if you are going to do a corporation, should this be a C corporation or an S corporation, or are there other types of corporations? And that's not enough. In addition to all this, are you going to need a limited partnership, or perhaps a limited liability company? Or what about a limited liability partnership? And then there's the ever confusing limited liability, limited partnership. In addition to this, you'll start hearing people talking about title holding land trusts, personal property trusts, and then revocable or grantor trusts. And it can become so confusing. You literally could spend tens of thousands of dollars with attorneys very quickly, and then you get into the issue of let's talk with the accountant about it, and they're giving you different advice from your attorney, and it gets tremendously confusing. Well, let's begin by pointing out that there are three types of real estate entrepreneurs. If you make an investment in real estate and you're not actively involved in it, then that's considered passive income. Real estate is by definition a passive activity according to the Internal Revenue Service. However, some of you are in the real estate business and you have active income, which is a different type of income. And a business, well, we'll talk more about this later, but there's a specific difference between investment income and active income, or passive and active income, and it impacts how you want to protect yourself. Finally, you may be just a note investor. You may be holding mortgages and trading mortgages, and that may be portfolio income. And once again, this muddies the waters just a little bit. Well, so what do we all do? Well, I remember when I was beginning to buy houses, I went to my attorney and I said, what if I don't do this? And what if I do this? And the attorney was able to coach me on my liability. And I found over the years that most attorneys, especially if they are general practice attorneys, meaning they do a wide variety of legal work, tend to be negative about your doing things that might earn money. And I finally figured out why. It's because if they don't really understand it thoroughly, and I don't see how everyone can understand everything, they can't. If they recommend that you don't do it, and you don't do it, then you have no liability. Whereas if they recommend you do go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity, and you end up in trouble, who made the recommendation? They did. And so they tend to be on the negative side. I'm not saying in every situation, but I'm just, this is my general experience. They're focused on your liability and they don't want you exposing yourself. In contrast, when I go to my CPA, they're thinking to themselves the same questions. What is the tax impact if John doesn't get involved in this investment? And what is the tax impact if he does get involved in this investment? And if I don't fully understand it, or if the whole thing goes south, it's going to make me look bad if I told him to do it, so I'm going to have a tendency to do what? Recommend against it. And it's simply because the attorney doesn't understand the entire picture, the CPA doesn't understand the entire picture, and they're not necessarily supposed to. But neither of them really understands the balancing act that you and I as investors must do every day when we look at tax impact on one side, liability on the other, and we balance that against the opportunity for profit. Now that's the bottom line. So if you're a landlord, it gets even worse. Look at this guy. Look what's happened to him. Hopefully I don't look like that. If you're a landlord, you've got additional liability exposure. First, you've got to comply with the Georgia landlord-tenant laws. Now, I know there are a number of you live out of state. You don't have to comply with Georgia landlord-tenant laws, and here's what makes that worse. You have landlord-tenant laws in the state where you are. This is one area where the federal government has not yet taken over, although they're moving in that direction. Every state has its own landlord-tenant laws. How you handle the money is an issue. There's liability if you do it wrong, and specifically, I can tell you in Georgia, and I suspect most other states, if you don't handle the security deposit properly, for example, in Georgia, you can be charged 3 times, treble damages for failure to return the security deposit in a certain time frame. How you write your lease is critical. The idea here is you can't have a contract for an illegal purpose. So if you write a lease agreement that says A landlord grants permission for the tenant to run a house of ill repute in the property. Well, that's fine between you and the tenant. The problem is a house of ill repute, I believe, in Georgia is illegal, and you've got a contract for an illegal purpose. So there's a problem. And now we get down to the bottom line. Those of you like me who are licensees of the Georgia Real Estate Commission are responsible for following the rules and regulations of the Georgia Real Estate Commission. And this lays an additional layer of liability on us. Well, what are we supposed to do? Why should you care about all this? Look at this guy. Look how upset he is. I hope that's not you right now. This must be a classic 1940s picture. And I don't know where we dug this up, but this guy's really upset. Well, I don't want you to be upset, but you should care about it. The reason you should care is to protect yourself, your family, your assets, your home, your lifestyle, and your future. Now, my friend Dykes Botiford, who is one of the best real estate trainers I've ever met, if you ever have a chance to take a course offered by Dykes Botiford, I strongly recommend that you do so. He always says, how many of you listening to me right now believe that if you lost everything tomorrow, that you could build it all back in 10 years? Raise your hands. And I always raise my hand because I honestly believe in the next 10 years, I could, if I got wiped out today, in 10 years I could build it all back. And then he says, and here's the trick, Dyke says, how many of you want to try? And every hand goes down. And while yes, we do believe that we could, and yes, we have that entrepreneurial spirit and that positive attitude that I carry, and I know you do too, I wouldn't willingly submit myself to that. And so we don't want to let ourselves be put in a position of being wiped out by a lawsuit. Here's the bottom line. Whether you like it or not, somebody is watching you right now. I don't know if it's a neighbor. I don't know if it's a tenant. I don't know if it's a creditor. Heaven forbid it's the Internal Revenue Service or the Georgia Department of Revenue. Somebody is right now, without your knowledge, saying, I wonder what assets this person has and how I can get to them. Now, let's start with personal injury attorneys. So many of you have commented to me that you've seen more and more of these commercials that begin with somebody saying, I got $300,000. Well, I got $500,000. Well, Ken Nugent got me $1 million. And he says, find out how much your lawsuit is worth. Get the money you deserve. Well, I don't know whether these people deserve it or not, but let me tell you what happens when there's a slip and fall. And let's pretend this is a legitimate slip and fall at your property. Your tenant walks out on the porch and there's a coat of ice from, it happened to be a real cold night, and there's frost or something, and your tenant slips and falls and hits their head on the step or something like that. Well, they call 911, the ambulance comes, takes them to the hospital, they stitch them up, they set them straight. Your insurance takes care of everything. You've got insurance, and that's why we have insurance, and we pay it every year, and that's all well and good. And the person is probably even getting a check from your insurance company for the period of time that they're not working while they're recuperating, and that's fine. But while they're recuperating, they're sitting there watching television, and on comes some law firm and says, get the money you deserve. Have you been injured in an accident? Well, guess what? Your tenant says, well, yeah, I have, and I haven't gotten the money I deserve. Your tenant then goes and sees these attorneys, and the first question is, who owns the property? Well, your tenant probably doesn't know. And so the first thing the attorney does is he spins around in his chair, turns on the computer, and pulls up the database for the county where the property is located and sees who the owner is. Now, if your name is there, that really makes it easy for him. Thank you so much for putting your name on title to the real estate. But even if it's not, they figure, okay, here's some name. Let's find out what else this person owns. So if the attorney finds out that the owner's name is Joe Calloway, and here's the address for Joe Calloway. It's a P.O. box in Atlanta. They can then quickly say to the computer, what else does Joe Calloway own? Not just in DeKalb County, but anywhere in the state of Georgia. And yes, there are databases available that will tell you what is owned by any entity or person in the state of Georgia. And they add all that up. And what are they adding up? They're adding up the values according to the county tax evaluation, the tax valuation of all these properties. Now, you and I know the tax value is not always correct, but it's a starting point. And then it's actually pretty easy for them to say, well, they must have insurance for 75% of this amount, otherwise they'd be like in a co-insurance situation. Then they're actually able to go to the security deed on that property, if any, and run an amortization schedule and determine approximately what the balance is on your mortgage. Now, it may be lower than that because you may have prepaid it and they wouldn't know, but that just benefits them because it means you have more equity. And they add up how much equity is apparent. So, for example, let's say you own one house and your name is Joe Calloway. It's worth $175,000 according to Fulton County, and according to a security deed, you owe today about $75,000 on the mortgage. That means you've got a value of $175 minus a $75,000 mortgage. All of a sudden, you've got $100,000 in apparent equity. Okay? What else do you own? Well, it turns out you own 10 houses, just like that one. And that's not unusual for an active investor. So now, instead of $100,000 equity, the attorney says this guy's worth $1 million, 10 times 100,000. And then you multiply that by 30 to 50% because that's what the attorney is going to charge. So you take $1 million by, let's say, 40%, which is very typical. That's $400,000. Do you think that's worth the attorney's time? I think it is. And their idea is, what does it cost me to file suit? Almost nothing. Bingo. Now you're saying, no problem, John, I've got insurance. Well, that's fine for a slip and fall. And that may cover you if you have a regular policy. Now, your standard policy is usually limited to $200,000 to $500,000. And then you've got an umbrella policy, maybe, that adds another $1 million to that. But what happens if there's a judgment against you for more than $1 million? Yikes, could that happen? Well, it sure could. Here's the nightmare for landlords, and I hope and pray that this never happens to you or anybody that you and I know. Heaven forbid there's a fire and the fire marshal determines that there were no working smoke detectors in the property at the time of the fire. Now your attorney's gonna say, oh, well, Joe Calloway always puts working smoke detectors in his properties, but the fire marshal is going to testify that there were none there. And an infant child died, heaven forbid, during the fire. And the parents are bereaved, and the attorney for the plaintiff's attorney seeks and gets a jury of women who have small children and are very sympathetic to the couple who lost their child. And they ask for lifetime earnings. Lifetime earnings for an infant is probably going to run $7 to $9 million. And if that jury comes back and says, you know what, Joe Calloway should have, well, he was responsible for there being a smoke detector, whether he put one in or not is beside the point, and we're going to award this to the family as a lesson to Joe Calloway and other landlords. Folks, you're on the hook after that $1 million from the insurance company. They will not fight for you. Not all of your liabilities are covered. There are things in your insurance policy that are specifically not covered. For example, a child gets sick from lead poisoning, exposure to lead in a home that's older than 1978, and even though you did everything right, your insurance company won't pay $1 because that's considered an environmental hazard. And all of your assets are at risk over these things. Well, this brings us to the field of asset protection. And this is why we're here tonight, to talk about this issue. What is asset protection? And remember that we don't have, we could spend months on this topic, but just in a nutshell, it's a set of legal techniques and a body of statutory and common law dealing with protecting assets of individuals and business entities from civil money judgments. That's what asset protection is all about, and that's what I want to encourage you to think about, because if you own real estate, you are at risk. Somebody is watching you right now. Now, I have asked attorney Bob Witcher to co-present with me a seminar that we've got coming up called the Real Estate LLC in Georgia. And the topic is how to protect your assets and your privacy. It includes a comprehensive manual with all of the forms that you need to either do this yourself or, which is my recommendation, to discuss it with your attorney. I think you should meet with your attorney and discuss what you learned in this class, and then allow your attorney to share their experience and their understanding of your unique situation. So I always recommend that you include your attorney, but you're not required to do that. Some people feel comfortable moving ahead. It's on Tuesday, April 2nd, 6:45 p.m. until 9:45 p.m. But if you can't come on that evening, it's okay, because we're having the seminar professionally recorded in audio to put on 3 audio CDs along with the manual and all the forms, just as if you were there, for the same price. We're meeting at the Hilton Garden Inn Perimeter, which is near Perimeter Mall, on Ashford Dunwoody, just inside 285. It's actually on Lake Hearn Drive. It's only $79 tax-deductible dollars. If you're already a real estate investor, then this investment will be tax-deductible to you. And it includes the presentation and the manual. For those of you that will be receiving the audio CDs, there's no additional charge, but there is $10 additional for tax and shipping. So that would be a total of $89 to receive the audio CDs. Now, in case you don't know Bob Witcher, you need to know Bob Witcher. He's not taking new clients unless they have been educated in a course just like this. But here's why you want to hear what Bob Witcher has to say. He understands you. He's known as the investor's attorney. He knows the law. He knows real estate. He's been a real estate investor for years. He knows contracts. He knows corporation law, and he knows liability law. And this is why I've asked him to join me in this presentation. We'll be talking about 4 specific topics in presenting you what we call the hybrid real estate LLC. First, we'll be talking about how you can achieve privacy. In my opinion, your name should never appear on the courthouse records. That's the first thing you do to protect yourself, is make it difficult for anyone who's snooping around to find out who's involved. If they don't know you're involved, it's much harder for them to proceed. Second, we'll be talking about asset protection and liability protection, the kind of protection that the Georgia corporation law affords to companies like Coca-Cola and UPS and Home Depot. You think they don't have potential liability? They do. You do too, but they get asset protection through Georgia corporation law. That's what we're going to talk about, and how you can benefit from it at much lower expense. Then we're going to talk about tax benefits. Now, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just put it in a corporation, then we won't have to pay taxes on it. It doesn't work that way, okay? You need to understand how the IRS feels about different types of entities and whether or not you'll need to file a separate tax return. And we'll talk in detail. Now, this is real hard for a lot of CPAs to understand, and I've had students come out of this class and call and say, well, John, my CPA says they're going to have to file a separate tax return. It's clearly because they did not understand what we're going to be teaching. If you think your CPA is going to say that, you should bring them to this class or send them. It's only $79. By the way, how much is your CPA charging you per hour? How much is your attorney charging you per hour? If you're paying less than $100 an hour, you need a higher power CPA. You need a better attorney. Bob and I are going to give you 3 hours of our best advice for $79. And finally, topic number 4, under the real estate LLC, the sort of a hybrid LLC, it gives you complete control over your property. You never have to share with anyone else or let somebody else or other group of board of directors or whatever tell you what to do with your property. You're in complete control at all times. During this course, we're going to talk about the simplicity of a sole proprietorship and the asset protection of a C Corp, and how we can sort of make a hybrid corporation that gives you the benefits of both. This hybrid corporation is going to be easy and inexpensive to start up. It will have minimal paperwork and formalities. Now, some of you are saying, well, John, I may have taken this course several years ago. Things have changed. We have a new IRS tax court decision that talks about formalities. And if you've been before, you need to come again to get this new information. I guarantee it'll be worth the $79, even if you've been before. But under the way that we structure this LLC, there will be no tax impact whatsoever. You won't have to file a different tax return, and it's just going to be easy as it can be. You'll retain ease of transfer. We'll teach you how to have ease of refinance, all under this LLC banner. And that's what we'll be talking about in the course. We'll cover the real estate LLC and its benefits in detail. We'll talk about how to achieve privacy. We'll define the corporate shield and how to maintain it. We'll talk about multi-member LLCs and partnerships. There are some situations where you may want to do that. We'll also talk about what the Internal Revenue Service and the Georgia Department of Revenue have to say about the real estate LLC. And this is what's going to be new to those of you that are graduates of some of my training from years back. We will specifically be talking about strengthening your LLC in operation and the tax implications of the LLC. This is where we're going to be covering some new ground, and I want to make sure you get this information because times have changed. So if you own real estate, you don't want to miss this event. It's a live event. We're meeting at the Hilton Garden Inn near Perimeter Mall on Ashford Dunwoody, just inside 285. Now, why am I waiting until 6:45 to start? Because the traffic all dies down around 6:15. So if you're coming down 400, if you're coming down 85, 75, or if you're coming up from the city, there's not going to be much traffic at 6:45, even 6:30. Plenty of free parking at the Hilton Garden Inn. Don't you hate going to a seminar and then you got to pay $10 for parking? 79 tax-deductible dollars. That includes the presentation as well as the manual. Of course, I will be there, and of course, Attorney Robert Witcher will be there to answer your questions. We'll end about 9:45, probably stay another 15-20 minutes answering individual questions, and you'll get a comprehensive manual with all the forms. Again, if you can't come, it's all right. We're having this professionally recorded. We'll produce 3 audio CDs along with all the manual and the forms, just as if you were there. Same price, $79 plus $10 taxes and shipping. Now, if you'll make a decision by this Friday night at midnight, I'm going to include 3 bonus items. Now, you've got to decide by Friday, because if you wait till the weekend, I can't do that. I've got more people that are going to sign up. But I've got 3 bonus reports I want to talk to you about. The first is the Landlord Checklist. I wrote that. It's normally $29, one of our best-selling reports, and it's 9 easy steps to get the best tenant at the highest rent possible in the shortest time at the lowest cost. Now, if this checklist gives you 1 additional month's rent, how much is that worth? $900, $1,000? We normally charge $29. Very popular report. I'm going to throw that in for free if you sign up by Friday at midnight. Next, your bonus report number 2, Tax Secrets for Landlords, by none other than Marjorie Adams CPA. In my opinion, there's not an accountant in Georgia who has a better understanding of real estate taxation. She's been doing it for 30 years. how to maximize the tax benefits of your rental houses without being red flagged by the IRS. Again, one of our best-selling reports, normally $29. If this report keeps you from having an audit by the IRS, what's that worth? You're not kidding. $900, $1,000? Okay, we sell them for $29, being yours included for free, if you'll decide by Friday night at midnight and go ahead and sign up for the course. Finally, our last bonus report. This is a brand new one by Robert Witcher, real estate attorney, How to Stay Out of Court. Now, I predict this is going to be one of our most popular reports. I'm charging right now on the website $29 for it. It's how to avoid being dragged into court for liability, damages, or anything else your tenant can think of. And it's going to be yours free if you'll go ahead and sign up for this seminar before midnight on Friday. Now, that's assuming we have seats available. This is a replay. I don't know when you're listening to it, but my advice is go immediately to money99.com, click on live seminars, and sign up for this event. Because I've only got 80 seats, 46 are already gone, that means 34, and that's before I send out this replay. And this is going out to several hundred people. Get the whole thing for $79. Go to Money99, register for a ticket at $79. This offer ends Friday at midnight if you want those 3 bonus reports added. Finalize your purchase. I'd go do it now, and then you'll get everything that we have to offer. Here it is again, John Adams and Robert Witcher, Tuesday, April 2nd, Hilton Garden Inn. Now, if you want the audio tapes, go ahead and sign up for the seminar and then send me an email to johnadams@money99.com and say, John, I can't come to the event. I want the audio tapes. And we'll bill you that additional $10 and get them right out to you. Please allow a week for us to have that audio produced and shipped to you. And that'll be $89 instead of $79. But shoot me an email. And other than that, folks, I've only got a total of 80 seats at the live event where you and I and Bob Witcher get to talk about your situation. Hey, I really appreciate this time together. Thank you so much for investing this time. If you have any questions, shoot me an email right now to johnadams@money99.com. You can register for $79 if any seats are left. And if you'll do it before Friday at midnight, you'll get those 3 bonus reports. All right, folks, that's the story. Thanks so much.